Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far in, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps promote my channel. I really appreciate that. I also love to get comments, so leave a comment if you'd like. I'm in a bit of an Art Deco-y mood today, so I think I'm going to make some Art Deco-y earrings. I have a couple of, I think they're 5x7 emerald cut, what do they call it? Mystic Topazes, and I don't usually use that, but I have a couple of them, and I thought it would be appropriate for something from the Art Deco period. It looks a little bit like what's that stuff called? Carnival glass to me, so that seems old-fashioned-y to me, and I think it might look kind of cool in the Art Deco earrings. We'll see. Before we get started, I need to thank some people. I specifically wanted to thank Sandra L. and Eileen C. You both are new members of my Patreon. Thank you for signing up for that. I wanted to thank all the rest of my patrons too for all your support and the kind things that you say, as well as the great community you formed over there. Thank you for that. The other group is my YouTube subscribers, which is probably you if you're watching this. If not, it should be. But either way, thank you guys for all of your support. I really appreciate the people buying me coffees. That's a nice cash infusion to help me buy supplies, so I really appreciate that. That helps a lot. But also, just thanks for the nice comments and things. So thank you so much for all of your support. Okay, well, let's get started on this project. So this is my design idea book that I draw up my ideas in. I have these available in my merch store if you're interested. I have found, as I've continued doing this, that if I have a sketch at the beginning, it helps me to come out with a better outcome. And so I started doing that, and I really think it's improved my abilities. So it has a nice graph matrix in the background. It helps me keep things symmetrical, which I'm not good at drawing-wise. So. But this is what I came up with. It's very similar to a lot of Art Deco earrings that I've seen online. And I have, where did I put this? I have two of these Mystic Topazes. If you're unfamiliar with Mystic Topaz, it's basically just topaz, and they've used a special process where they put a coating on the surface to give it that sort of iridescent sheen. It's called vapor deposition coating, and it looks to me just like carnival glass. So I don't use it that often, but every once in a while something calls for it, and I had a couple of these, so I thought they'd make good stones for this. So I'm going to be setting those in a little prong setting. It's going to be a little kind of a box like that with some prongs sticking up, and we'll build this around it. So I did a few of the things in advance just because this is going to be a complex build, and I made these little tops for the earring to dangle from. Let's get started on the part that's going to become the setting for the stone. I think that's a good starting place. So what I did in advance is I drew up pretty much about the size that I wanted this thing to be. I want it to be just slightly bigger than the stone because I'm going to file it down at an angle slightly so the stone sits down in there a bit. And I'm going to use 14 gauge square wire for this. I'll be using my miter vise jig to do the 45-degree angles on the corners, and then we'll mount a prong on either corner up there. So we'll be doing two of these. I'll probably not do both things since I'm doing two of exactly the same thing. Since we're doing earrings, I'll probably just show you one, and then I'll do the other one off camera to save time in the video, because I'll just be doing exactly the same thing. I'm going to use 18 gauge sheet for this part up here. Probably, like I said, 14 for the frame here. Probably 14 there. I don't know, we'll see. I was thinking about using some 12 gauge half round down here to kind of give it a little bump, maybe. I don't know, we'll see. I may put a piece of wire soldered on top of the sheet here too. This will be a cutout, that'll be a cutout. So, but I think that's where we're going to go. So first, I'm going to get some square wire. really handy if you want to make nice 45-degree angles. They also make a nicer one than I have that has 60s and 30s as well. But basically you just, it's got slots and things. You open it up. I can feed this wire through there. Line it up so it's sticking out just a little bit. You can use your saw to saw it off. I generally clip off, if there's quite a bit there, and then just use my file to file it flush with that. It's generally a little bit of a filing burr on the end there. Let's crank that off. Okay, so now we need to decide how long these top ones are. Since I'm doing 2 earrings, I'm going to be making 1, 2, and then 1, 2 for the other ones. And these ones are going to be a little bit shorter, so I'll do 4 of those as well. In order to get a pretty close measurement, sometimes I'll do this where I'll use my Sharpie, and then I'll kind of draw a line through the Sharpie so I get an idea about where I want that to go to. That way you can get a pretty precise line rather than this big fat-ended Sharpie. Okay, I'm going to cut it off just a little longer than that. Let's see, but I got that diagonal line right there. I can scoot it about to where I want it, and then tighten these down. Pop that out of there. And then we've got that one. And I can use this as a guide to cut the next one. For the side ones, I'll have to do a different one though. So let's do that quick. I think I want this one just to go shorter. Good thing is you can take off just a little bit at a time if you need to. Just push it in to where just a tiny bit's sticking out. Tighten it down and just file it again. Before we solder these together, you always want to make sure that sometimes there's some filing burrs left over. Get rid of those so they don't interfere with you getting these lined up first. Okay, that's about right. So I'm going to go ahead and make the rest of these for 2 of these. So I'm going to go off camera for a minute and I'll come back and we'll solder them together. So I'll be right back. So I got all of those cut and filed down. So let's put them together now. I've just laid them on the soldering pad here. If you've never been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder for most everything. I also use a liquid flux called My-T-Flux that I spray on with a spray bottle. I'm going to be kind of dribbling because I'll probably knock it out of position. I'll have to put them back in place. The other thing I do a lot is I do pick soldering, and so if you're interested in finding out about pick soldering, I'll put a link right up there for a video about it. It's one of those skills that made things so much easier for me when I first learned it. So I think it's worth figuring out. My torch is a Smith Silversmith torch, which is their acetylene air model, and I've been using it for years. Love it. See, I always spray things out of position back. That's pretty good. Okay, so like I was saying, I'll pick up a little bit of solder on the pick here. Heat this to the soldering temperature and then just touch it on there. Made a boo-boo on that one. I got this wire hot enough for the solder to flow on it, but I didn't have this one quite there, so it just jumped on the one, so I had to go back and add another piece. Okay, let's see how this fits in there. That's kind of the size that I was looking for. Now I'm just going to take my file and file this a little bit tapered. Angle this a little bit and use my needle file. I'm creating an angle for the girdle of the stone, or the pavilion of the stone, to kind of slide down to. Okay, in the corners, you could use like a triangular file if you wanted to get those corners down nice. I'll probably use the Dremel with a little diamond burr to get them, really sharply cornered. So, but that's the idea. I'll be right back with. Hopefully, we'll have both of them done then. Okay. I don't know if you can see well enough on the camera, but basically I've kind of just tapered it downwards in there so that the stone will sit in there nicely. And then we'll have these prongs on the corners that'll hold it in place. So these particular stones aren't cut very straight. So I may need to do a little bit of maneuvering of prongs to get it just to look square. Or rectangular, I should say. So, but that's how they're going to sit. So I think we need to put the little prongs on, and I used to always have problems with prongs, but there's some tricks you can do to make them a little bit easier. If you're doing ones where you're just soldering them right to the top of something like this, if you make like an X out of some wire, bend it so the four ends of the wire end up right where you want them to, and then you can just solder it down. And you can actually even leave that little cage on there until you're done with the area and then cut them off. And I find that to be a pretty effective way to do this. So we don't need a lot of extra, so I'm going to make them about 1 inch long for this one. 2.5 centimeters. I'm going to file a little groove where I made that mark and get it started. Like that. But then I'm going to angle this while I'm filing. Hopefully that way when we cross them like this, they'll stay kind of an X, like that. So I'm going to put them on the pad and solder them kind of like that. Kind of get an idea where to bend them. So I'm gonna, this is the basic idea. I want them right on the corners there. So I'm gonna keep fine tuning them until they're positioned right where I want them. Okay, I've got these positioned right on the corners of the holes that are going through those little rectangles. And they look wonky on top. That's because I was bending them in order to get those prongs all in the spot where I want them to be. I don't want these to move. I dribbled some flux on here. You could sweat some solder to the bottoms of these wires, I suppose, if you want to. There's probably a little bit of solder on these things anyway, although I filed off a lot of it. I'm just going to make sure that it's solid. Oopsie. Guess I'll do repositioning that one. Okay, that's all hooked together. See if we can get this guy positioned again. It'd be easier if I could still see. Look and make sure we got a good solid connection on all of those little prongs. It's pretty good. They look relatively well aligned. Okay, let's see what the next step is going to be. So we've got this. Let's put the bottom part on next. Pre-made some little guys like this. This is just 16 gauge wire, and then I put a little ball that I made out of some scrap in the middle of it. So, and then I think this, like I said, I think let's do it out of some 12 gauge half round maybe. So we need to cut, looks like for this one, about a little over 5 millimeters. This one's like 3. I guess you could use the miter vise jig for this as well. I was doing this for about 25 years before anyone ever told me about the miter vise jig. I don't know how I missed that along the way. You sometimes get in your little bubble and don't escape from it for a long time. So I got a smaller one cut as well, and I lined them up here like this on the bottom of the little settings that we've created. Let's see if we can solder those on. I still have some solder over here, so. The half round wire is light enough to where the surface tension of the solder can actually kind of pull it upwards. Oopsie, that wasn't very well done. Get back over there. Got these little round things to add. Put that just right there. Move this a little further inland. Come here, turn around. I'm trying to position the solder joint towards the piece I'm soldering it to. That way I'll probably, this one I may not have to add any. This one I probably will have to do a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit. Good solder, but I want to make sure it's got a good strong connection there. Okay. Those look pretty good. Now we need to figure out what I'm going to use for this, because I want these two ends to poke through into a hole that runs through this piece, so that it can swing freely, and so I need something tall enough to drill a hole through sideways, but I want it to be kind of that narrow. So let me see what I can find. So I found some 10 gauge square wire, which is relatively tall, and then I ran it through the rolling mill a few times just to flatten it out in one dimension. So now I'm going to anneal it, which is to soften the metal back up a little bit so that I can easily drill some holes in it. That cool down for a minute. There should be plenty to make two of these things. It's only got to be about, I'll make it a little bit longer in case I screw up, like that. So I'll do, I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'm going to drill some holes big enough for 20 gauge wire to go through, and then we'll come back and we'll solder these as well as these decorations on right above those. Alright, so I got two of these about the right length. I drilled a little hole in the center of them. I didn't quite get it centered on this one, but I think that's alright. It's not so close to the edge that it's going to break through, but I don't think it'll matter that much. And we need to solder it. Let's cool those off. Now, my sketch here, need little things going up like that. So I'm going to use the miter vise jig to make 245s on some 14 gauge square and make little corners like that. And I'll just pop them in there, so I'll be right back. So maybe a little difficult to see because these are pretty small, but I have, using the miter vise jig, I just made 245s out of some 14 gauge wire and soldered them together and then cut them very short. So I got one on either side there, one over here and one over there. I think I better quit messing with them. They're on there, they're pretty close. Okay. I'd likely file to neaten them up a little bit. Okay. Now it's time to make the top part. So I cut 2 pieces of 18 gauge sheet, which should be enough, but I think I'm gonna create a template out of one. So I'm gonna put some masking tape over this and draw it, I think. I like that. The reason I was putting this up here is I want the top piece here to start at about the same width as these, I think. And I think I'm just gonna split this ring down here. And then I'm going to solder a piece of 20 gauge through there that will be able to run through that. At the top here I'm going to put a little jump ring, which we will feed through something I'll show you in a bit here. So, okay, so I guess we need to go saw this out. Welcome to Chad's messy sawing area. Okay. Okay, let's do this. So I put a 00 on here. See if I can keep from breaking it. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it's cleaned up pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to color this one purple, and then just trace it out with a T-pin so that I get a relatively easy line to follow. I just used the shears to cut the edges off here, and then I filed them a little bit. Okay, I'll be right back after I pierce that out. So I have them pretty close to identical. They're not perfect, but they're pretty good. So I need a little loop at the top, so I got some 20 gauge strap laying here. So I thought about doing these just as a loop that you'd run a post over and just have a post to hang them from, but I thought I'd go ahead and make my own, but have this permanently attached to it. So I'm going to put a loop on the top of this thing, and I'll put a post on the back of this for the ear, but I created, I don't know if you can see that, it's got a cap over the top like that, and it's got just a piece of 14 or 16 gauge round sticking straight up, so I can get a loop around it. So this thing should be able to swing. So I'm going to solder an unclosed loop on the top of these. So I need a piece of 20 gauge wire that goes between those two, like right there. So let's do that. I need some very small pieces of solder for this. So, put some posts on these. I always find the easiest way to put ear wires on, or not ear wires I should say, but posts. Pick up a little solder like that on some 20 gauge. Keep the piece you're going to solder it to. Cool off. Throw that in the pickle. Pick up another piece here. That's what they're going to be like. The way I'm going to hook these together is I'm actually going to take the saw and cut it right in the middle here and pull them opposite directions and then be able to stick them in hopefully from either side. And not going to resolder it actually. I'm just going to slide them on there and see how it works. I'm going to round the tops of these a little bit so that they rotate nicely. Alright, so I'm going to put those in the pickle and then we'll be back in a while to polish them and set the stones. Okay, so I did one all the way through to the end off camera just so I could make sure everything was going to come together right. And then this one I still have to set the stone. Almost got it where I want it to be. So sometimes you need to do some adjustments on how thick these prongs are and stuff. So I'm doing a little bit of filing on the inside in order to get this to sit in there nicely. I'm going to call that good even though it's not perfect. I could be here all night. I'm going to cut them off about midway up the girdle facets. And I'll just I'll clean those up with the file and with a Dremel to smooth out the tops of those and round them over. In the meantime, let's hook. Just hook it on the stud part now. So, what was that? I didn't get that very straight. But overall, that's the general idea. I'll cut those posts off the right length, and call that a day, I think. So I made an executive decision, and it's because I wasn't really pleased with how symmetrical these sheet cutout things came out, and they just looked a little rough. And so I decided to streamline it a little bit, and I changed it to using 2 pieces of 14 gauge square, which I kind of tapered out and soldered together, and then I did the same kind of thing across with a little pin. So I'll be polishing those up, and I think that'll streamline them a little bit and make them look a little cleaner. So I'll do that and take some better pictures at the end. Right, well that was the Art Deco earrings with the Mystic Topazes. I hope you liked this project. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. I'd love to have a comment as well. Something else you might consider doing is check out my playlist page. I've split my videos. I've got 260 plus videos now, so it's starting to get to be a large quantity of content. And so I've split them into playlists where it's easier to find what you're looking for. So you might check that out. And while you're there, why don't you go ahead and hit the subscribe button too? I'd love to have you as a subscriber. One last thing before you leave, there's some links in the video description down below. If you want to, for instance, buy me a coffee, that's down there. There's a link to my website if you'd like to see some jewelry for sale. And there's also a merch store link where you can get like that design idea book I showed you at the beginning. And finally, there's a link to my Patreon if you're interested in becoming more involved with that. So thank you for visiting, and take care. Happy silversmithing.